Good morning. I'm Bruce Weber, the Willem Quaker Dean of the Zicklin School of Business, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this episode of Zicklin Talks Business. Real estate is known as a challenging asset class in the best of times. Several commercial buildings in Manhattan, however, have sold for a fraction of their pre-pandemic values recently, and many other buildings remain occupied at levels far below capacity. Owners of many of these New York buildings will find it difficult or impossible to adapt them to new uses such as residential apartments or hotels. An underlying factor here is remote work, which is also coupled with many challenges faced in central business districts across the U.S., which is a problem Manhattan shares with other large cities. What is the future for commercial real estate in New York City and other large cities? Are there also serious risks for banks that are the major lenders into this sector? In this session, our namesake, Larry Zicklin, class of 1957, will discuss the litany of challenges facing landlords and real estate developers in the New York City region. He's joined by Stephen Riker, Vice Chair of Cushman & Wakefield, one of the largest real estate brokers in New York City metropolitan area. Stephen has arranged innovative leasing and sales transactions for over 30 years and has represented many corporations in the leasing of millions of square feet of space in Midtown Manhattan and Fairfield, Connecticut. He's developed 1,320 homes in Ponce, Puerto Rico, and owns major real estate in New York City and the surrounding area. He's a 1958 graduate of Yale University. There will be time later in today's session for questions from you, the audience. You can submit those anytime via the Zoom chat feature, and they'll be received by Associate Dean Gwen Webb, and she'll pose those questions later in the meeting to our speakers. So once again, moderator is Larry Zicklin, former chairman of Neuberger Berman and a Zicklin instructor in business ethics in the undergraduate honors program. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Larry.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Appreciate it. And hello, Steve.
Hello, Larry.
Steve and I are friends. Steve, when we had lunch not so long ago, you said to me, quoting Dickens, that these are the best of times and the worst of times in real estate. Tell me what you meant.
It is the best of time and the worst of times. Depending on what property you own, it's either a good time or a bad time. If you have a brand new property, you will find more tenants looking at you and considering you for a location versus an older building, which unfortunately there are more of, and the vacancy there is still very substantial. I think before going further, I should say to everyone, what is the commercial real estate market in New York? How many square feet? It's about 550 million square feet. And how much vacancy today? There's about 98 million square feet available, broken down roughly 77 million square feet direct space and about 21 for sublease. By the way, that's the lowest figure in 2 years, the 21.
That's 20. It's a 20%, almost 20% vacancy rate.
Yes, sir.
And what is the normal vacancy rate in New York?
8%, 7 to 8%. So it's quite a disparity between what's normal and what the conditions are today. Having said that, if I own a brand new building and it's a trophy building or a highest end of a building, I have more tenants looking at me for space than I have space to offer. What do I mean by that? Well, there are about 20 opportunities for a tenant requiring over 100,000 square feet in the entire city. Only 20 opportunities amounting to about 8,500,000 square feet. Basically, we're out of space, the top space.
So new space on Park Avenue is basically fully leased up?
The vacancy is 5 to 6% north of Grand Central. In the entire Midtown, it's about 12%. But upper Park Avenue, yes, you'd be very happy to have space there. There are more tenants looking at you than there is space available.
One of the great new spaces that's been built in New York City is probably One Vanderbilt,
Yes, sir.
which is right next to Grand Central Station,
Right.
an SL Green building. Can you talk about that building and how leased up it is at top rents?
The building was pro forma for about $175 per square foot. It is completely occupied today. I think if there's one floor or 1 square foot available, I'd be surprised. And it was rented at in excess of $175 a square foot. Top space in the building today is going for $200 a square foot, but there's practically no vacancy at all, Larry. None, none.
And that was a speculative building when it was built. It must have taken
Absolutely.
years to prepare the land.
Green
And
took 10 years to assemble the site, and the site is really terrific, and they did a wonderful job. By the way, I think it's important to note there's a difference between a new building and an older building, and everyone should know that. It isn't just a question of price. The price for a trophy building or a top building is about $146 to $148 a square foot to rent it per year. The average building, but good quality, an A building, not A plus, is about $84 a square foot. But the difference isn't just the rent, it's what you're getting for that rent. A new building like One Vanderbilt, the first difference is the slab to slab. It isn't 10 feet or 11 feet, it's 12 to 15 feet.
so that's the height of the floor.
The height of the floor from the floor to the next floor up. Number two, the columns. The lack of columns in new buildings is noticeable. In older buildings, the columns are every 23 or whatever feet apart. The third thing, there's no convectors in the building. Convectors are what's on the window side of the floor. It measures 36 to 48 inches coming into the space. More
That's the air conditioning and the heating.
That's correct, Larry. But the most important difference, in my opinion, is the air. What do you mean, the air? What I mean by that is the volume of air being pushed into the space, which makes living there and working there so much more enjoyable than in a normal building that's 60 or 70 years old or 80 years old or older. And it's noticeable. I ask you, go into the lobby of One Vanderbilt and just stand there for a minute, and then go into an older building and you'll notice the difference. Completely different, the air volume.
Steve, when a landlord brings a tenant into the building now, what does it cost the landlord in terms of free rent versus what it might have cost 5 years ago?
Very interesting question, because today landlords are facing a tremendous amount of money that they have to spend to bring a tenant in. Rent, number one. Number two is the installation. They give an installation to the incoming tenant. What does that cost? About $150 a square foot. Number two, what else do they get? They have amenities in the building that heretofore didn't exist. And any building that doesn't have the amenities, what are the amenities? Number one, a gym. Two, meeting rooms. Three, a cocktail area. Four, dining. Five, roof terraces. If you looked at buildings 5 years ago, nobody was talking about roof terraces and setback terraces and all these amenities. And this costs a lot of money for the landlord, a tremendous millions and millions of dollars that he has to give. So he gives free rent of $150 or thereabouts. He gives
Which it sounds like 2 or 3 years.
no, if you're paying $146 a square foot, it's about a year. But on top of that, they're giving free rent, 15, 16, 18 months of free rent at the start of the lease. And you're talking about a 10-year lease and in some cases a 7-year lease. So the landlord is putting out a tremendous amount of money. Now, if the landlord doesn't put out that money in the amenities, the tenant is looking elsewhere, and he's looking at the trophy building or the AAA space, the new space. Not
Steve, is what's happening now, was that inevitable? Or do you think it was a result of COVID and employees not coming into the office 5 days a week as it was 5-10 years ago?
I've said this before, and I'll say it to you again. The pandemic didn't do anything that wasn't happening already. The world evolves. People work differently today than they worked yesterday. It was inevitable that people finally realized that they could work from home and they could work from a location close to home versus coming into the city. And that was happening for the last years, 5, 10 years. And today, the purpose of coming to the office, in my opinion, is not just to work. It's to socialize. The whole purpose of coming into the office is to see other people, to socialize with them, to have their ideas, and you can work from home. Growing up, you always heard your parents saying to you, I have to go to the office to work. You don't have to go to the office to work. You pull out your computer, you can do it at home. You can read the text, you can do your studying, you can do your research. You don't have to be in the office to do that.
And can you compare the state of New York real estate now to what's going on in the rest of the country with large areas of commercial space? I'm thinking Chicago or Los Angeles or Houston.
Well, first of all, I mentioned a few minutes ago that the vacancy is about 98 million square feet in New York City, which represents about a 20%, 17 to 20% vacancy. If I didn't say it, I'll say it again. That amount of space represents the entire Los Angeles, Chicago, and Boston market. I don't have the figures on my fingertips of what those vacancies are, but certainly Los Angeles is suffering in similar fashion to New York, and their vacancy has crept up, and I've heard it exceeds 20%. I've heard it's as high as 40% in some cases. So it is happening around the United States, if not the world.
And in a way, is this problem magnified by the fact that landlords and developers in the real estate area tend to leverage themselves as the appreciation of buildings takes place, and they're always borrowing, at my understanding, they're always borrowing as much as they can to go on to another project. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Larry, I think it's important to stop for a minute and think about what the market was prior to the pandemic and what it is today with that aspect. You go into a bank in 2019 with interest rates at 2% or whatever it is and say, I have a property. The value of it is $1,000 a square foot, for example, or $100 a square foot, just so we can talk about it. And I need a loan. And the bank, may it be one bank or another, I can mention names, and they'd say to you, okay, how much of a loan are you looking for? And you say, well, forget 50%, forget 60%. Let's build a stack of 70 or even 80%, a stack of financing. I'll pay you this much on the first, this much on the second, etc. And the value, let's say it was $1,000 a square foot on the valuation. So you're getting up to $700 of financing on the $1,000, or if not 75. Today you go in and the valuation, first of all, isn't 1,000. Valuations today are down about 50%. The average sale price in 2019 was about $1,037 per square foot. Today, it's $518 a square foot. So the $1,000 valuation now is $500 or $600. And you say to the bank, I want to stack, I'd like 70% loan. He said, no, we'll give you 50%. And by the way, I expect you to put money in. Mortgages today, in most cases, the owners of the property have to put in capital when they're refinancing. And by the way, just think about what happens here. If you and I own a piece of property, our family owns a piece of property, we've been giving our families the income. We've owned this property because the name of the game for the families that own real estate in New York for years and years and years have been to keep the same piece of property. Don't sell it, just hold it, improve it, live with it. Today, these same families are selling their property, not all of it, but selectively selling property because the call for capital, when you go out for refinancing, they're not used to putting their hand in their pocket. They're expecting money to come to them, not going away from them.
They expect to receive a check, not write a check.
Absolutely correct.
And my guess is there's not the same feeling. I knew some of these real estate people, and they had a feeling toward the buildings that they created. When it comes
Absolutely.
into the third generation, I would assume it's just a check. It's not a building.
All right. And there's a capital call. And the capital call is, well, I don't have it. I've been living on it. And so what do? You have to go out and sell the property. And some of these families are selling their properties in Midtown and downtown New York. And that's
And what do you do with a second class property, a B building, C building, whatever it's called? When the bank calls you on a note, says, you know, the valuation of this thing is down, you're only half leased. Who do you sell it to?
well, the name of the game that people talk about at cocktail parties and at luncheons and dinners is, oh, we can convert it. Let me say to you right up front, converting a building from a commercial to a residential is not easy. It's very, very difficult. You need a certain floor plate, number one. Number two, you need the building to be vacant. You can't demolish a building or work on a building when there are tenants in it. So you have to you have to have vacancy of the entire building. Next, you need zoning. This is being worked on by the city with yes and whatever. The zoning is a little easier, but it's not something you can forget about. And the third thing is the value of the property. When you think of converting a piece of property from commercial to residential, you have to really buy it at a severe discount of 50% or more, because what you're talking about really is land value. So going back to your question, Larry, what are these people of B and C looking to do? B and C ownership? They're looking, can they convert it? Or can they sell it to somebody who can think of converting it or demolish it and start again?
Is it cheaper to demolish than convert an existing building?
I don't have the factual answer for you, but I think it probably is. Now, 625 Madison Avenue between 58th and 59th Street is right now undergoing a demolition, and it's going to be resurrected as office, residential, and a hotel. That's 58th to 59th on the east side of the block on Madison Avenue. That building is going to be a major conversion. And the block immediately north, 655 Madison, is also going to be converted. There are a total of 64 properties being converted in the city now. 50% of them are underway. The rest of them are going through the process of vacating and rezoning, et cetera.
And when they're converted, are they converted mostly to residential, or are there hotels that are being converted from office buildings?
Mostly residential, mostly residential.
Well, as long as we've got to Madison Avenue, maybe we can talk about a couple of buildings that I've seen in the newspapers in the past. One of the buildings I saw was a building at 135 West 50th that was recently sold. I remember in my classroom, you talked about the square footage when the building was built and how much the square footage is now. Can you just mention that?
Okay. 135 West 50th Street is located between 6th and 7th Avenue. When it was built, it contained 675,000 square feet. Today, it contains 920,000 square feet. As we all know who are participating on this phone call, buildings don't grow. You can water them, but that doesn't change their square footage. So how does a building go up by 200,000 square feet? Well, it goes back to the 1950s when the Second World War is over and buildings started to be built. And landlords, and again, it's a family type of a business, sat around and said, I don't know if we're getting our fair shake on this. We're building buildings and we have lobbies and we have basements and we're not getting paid for the basement and we're not getting paid for the lobbies. We should do something to get our money out of the property. Now, how do we do that? So they came up with an idea. Let's call it an add-on factor or a loss factor. And we'll put a small percentage and that'll give us the money. We can say there's a loss factor of such and such. And we can get some money out of it and charge rent on it. Question, does it have anything to do with the loss factor in the building or in the measurement of the building? No, absolutely not. Then where do you get the figure? You make it up. And it's avariciousness that just leads to getting it passed, and you have a loss factor of 3 to 5% or thereabouts. This is in the 50s. Well, like plants, everything grows. And avariciousness doesn't stop. So today, we have a loss factor of 27 to 29%. So a building that was 675,000 square feet is 920,000 square feet, 920,000 square feet. And you can't find the space, and people will come to me and say, well, Steve, how did they justify the 27%? By the way, it's going to 29%. How do they justify it? They don't justify it. That's what it is. And the next question will come, well, why don't you go to a building that doesn't charge that? The answer is universally, the market is asking for a 27 to 29% loss factor and accepting it. So if you go to the next building, it's the same thing. New buildings, 29%. Okay?
And so now you've explained why a real estate agent we retained once when we moved asked the landlord, how much is the carpeted space?
Yeah. Which is different than lost space. That's an add-on on top of that. Because as I mentioned a few minutes ago, buildings, floor plates have columns and also have convectors on the perimeter. Convector, I said to you, was 36 to 48 inches. Well, if you have a facade of 200 feet or 290 feet, that's a lot of convectors and a lot of inches.
Got it.
And now all you can do is put the carpet on the outside. You don't put it on the space that the convector's in.
So this building that we're talking about at 135 West 50th was just right opposite the music hall and Rock Center. It's
Yeah.
right in the neighborhood. It was built in 63 and it was
Right.
bought by UBS in 2006. Do you remember how much they paid for it?
333,
How much?
$333 million.
$333 million. In July, I read in the newspaper that it was sold by UBS. And how much did the buyer pay for it?
$8 million.
$8 million.
$8 a square foot. Yeah.
And how much does it cost to put up a new building now?
1,000.
So they were buying it for $8, and it cost $1,000 to put up new space.
Yeah.
And this is all based on tenancy. I assume this is well under 50% leased.
35% leased today. So before you go much further, you're talking about in 2019 when UBS bought this, and they had a cash flow, a potential gross rent of about $68 a square foot. Today, gross rent, if it was offered on the market, and it is being offered on the market, about $61 a square foot. But the vacancy is major.
2/3.
Yeah. So if you bought it for about $8 million a square foot, just
Well,
paying,
$8 million in total. $8 is good.
yeah, or $8 million. You come back down to a figure, operating expenses are about $12 a square foot in the building. Taxes are about $22 a square foot. That's today. And ground rent, because it's a leasehold, is about $6.78 a square foot. You'd be losing, even today, about $20 a square foot on 920,000 square feet, or
So,
$18 million a year, 18.6 per
so the
year.
new owners today are writing checks every month for the privilege of owning this building.
Absolutely. On top of that, we haven't talked about base building work. We haven't talked about tenant improvements that I referred to before at $150 a square foot. Haven't talked about leasing commissions or legal fees. And that would cost us, because we just paid the $8 million, it cost us about $142 million, just those figures.
So I have to ask you the question. The seller sold the building. The seller knows the building pretty well. The buyer buys the building for $8 or $9 million. What does the buyer have in mind?
Time will tell. We talked about this some months ago, and we said maybe he has a tenant in hand. I don't know. I don't think so. He may have an idea of a different use. The site is 290 feet on street, plus 200 feet in depth. Maybe demolish it and put up 2 towers on the close to 300 foot frontage. In other words, 290 feet of frontage. I don't know what they're going to do. But, people look at things in different ways. And people always think they have they're getting a bargain. I'm saying if you and I spent the $8 million to buy this, I think we would be not very, very happy. The slab to slab in the building is about 11.4, comes out to a hung ceiling, down less than it's about 8'6" ceiling, but slab to slab is about 11 feet at the most.
Yeah, but you see it because of the hung ceiling. You see 8 or 9 feet, 8.5
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah.
All right, so these buyers must have something in mind, because they're not going to write checks forever.
No.
Is New York short hotel space right now?
I don't really know the answer to that.
Okay.
It always seems to be short, and a new hotel is always looks like it should be a success.
Okay. I want to go to another building now, because it's an iconic building that I've been in so many times, and that's the Chrysler Building. When the Chrysler Building was built, it was the tallest building in New York before the Empire
Correct.
State Building. It's according to what I read, it's 1.2 million square feet,
Correct,
located perfectly
correct.
with a connection underground to Grand Central. What happened to the Chrysler building?
All right, let's go back to 1999 and stop for a minute in 1999 and know that the building needed a tremendous amount of work. What do you mean work? Elevators, yes, needed work on the elevators. On the facade, there are parts of the building that were literally being held together with duct tape in 1999. We managed the building before that, and the building was in very bad repair. Along comes Tishman, and they come and they get control of the $230 million mortgage on the property, and they take control of the building. And they set about to put the building into good shape. This is 1999. And they speak to the fee owners and they agree to a deal.
The fee owners being the land
Cooper Union.
underneath the building.
Yeah. And Cooper Union enters into a new ground lease at that time through 2147, with
I
Tishman.
just want to tell our audience, my recollection from reading about this is that Chrysler, in his will, willed it to Cooper Union, the ground lease.
Correct.
Okay, I'm sorry, go.
Very interesting. But they enter into this new ground lease for Tishman starting in 1999 for $5,500,000 a year, going to, in 2008, to $7 million, and then in 2013, going to $7,250,000. And they call that
$7,250,000.
Yeah, yeah. And Tishman goes ahead and starts investing $300 million in the property. Okay? Stick with this. In 2001, Tishman sells 75% of their position in the leasehold to a German group, TMW, for $400 million. And Tishman retains a 25% interest and continues to manage the property. Okay? Now, very important, time flies by. Now it's 2006. Cooper Union, the people that own the fee, they want to expand their physical plant at Cooper Union College. And they decide they're going to take a mortgage out on their fee position. Okay? And they take a mortgage through MetLife, a 30-year mortgage for $175 million. And the payments on that mortgage per annum are $10,300,000, plus a prepayment of $81 million cost, plus amortization starting in 2019 of $5.5 million. So their payments, simplistically, as of 2019, I know there are a lot of figures here and people are getting confused.
How much are their payments in 2019?
$15,800,000.
And how much do they expect on the
Absolutely the best question ever. They're expecting rent, as I just said above, of even in 2013 and that time of $7,250,000 to $7,250,000. Okay, so all of a sudden, Cooper Union is saying, I really don't have very much money. I need to do something. So they have a chance to step up the ground rent, and they enter into a new ground rent and agreed to and hold on when I tell you this, starting in 2018, of $32 million a year. And in 2028, it goes to 41. In 2037, it goes to 55. Okay? That's what the ground rent is. And because they needed money. And in 2008, Saudi group, ADIC, purchased a 90% stake in the leasehold. Hold on, hold on, hold on, for $800 million. I see you shaking your head.
And it's
I
all
bet-
subject to this $30 million rental, in effect, 30 plus million.
Yeah. No, you have, that's the ground rent.
The ground rent is what I'm talking about.
You pay $800 million. By the way, Tishman still is retaining a 10% interest. And in 2018, if you remember, this is before the pandemic, the ground rent goes to $32,500,000.
And Steve, what's happening to the tenancy during this period?
It's under the Tishman renovation and rehabbing of the building is doing fairly well. Okay, it's doing fairly well. It's an old building, but unfortunately, old buildings need a lot of money, and you have to keep on putting in money. But in 2018, the rent on the ground goes to $32,500,000, and RFR, A.B. Rosen and Fuchs, who own the Seagram buildings, they purchased with Cigna the leasehold position from the Saudis and Tishman for listen to me, $151 million, or an 81% drop from the previous
So
price.
they bought it for 900 odd million and they sell it for roughly 150.
Yeah.
All right. Now comes COVID, the pandemic. What happens?
Okay. As I just said, you have to keep on putting money into a building, and especially older buildings. The first thing that happens is, as you remember, people weren't coming to the city and people weren't renting space and using space. And we have a vacancy, as we started off this conversation, of close to 100 million square feet. And so the vacancies occur, stress occurs. And all of a sudden, Rosen and Fuchs say, this is going nowhere. We've got to renegotiate this ground rent because it's killing us. But in 2023, Cigna, the money partner for Fuchs and Rosen, goes broke. And they file for bankruptcy. And 1 month later, the Austrian government, where Cigna resides, orders Cigna to sell its stake in the leasehold. What does Cooper Union do? They go to Fuchs and to Rosen and say, I need my rent. I need my rent. I need my rent. Anyway, Rosen and Fuchs don't pay the rent, and they're behind in their payments in excess of $21 million now. And they've been forced out of their position. And Cooper Union now has the building.
Wait a minute. So Cooper Union has a building that I assume is not paying them enough to pay the mortgage that they've taken on this.
No,
Well,
you said it wrong. They're not paying anything.
They're not paying anything. Okay. And Cooper Union doesn't know how to manage buildings, so what does it do?
It hires Cushman & Wakefield.
So you're managing the building.
Yeah.
And you have, last time I was in the Chrysler building, the lobby didn't have any tenants. Is that
Correct.
still there?
And below, great stores on the passageways are empty.
So,
Upstairs, there's a vacancy.
so Cooper Union has a mortgage that they have to pay,
Absolutely. We
but I
talked about
assume they're
that.
not getting any income from the
Correct.
Chrysler building.
Oh, they're getting some. They're getting some. but they're
Enough
not.
to pay the mortgage?
That's questionable. It looks like MetLife will have the building. MetLife has the mortgage.
The MetLife will have the building. So Cooper Union is going to lose this building?
Good, yeah,
Wow. Wow.
absolutely. That's a big wow. That's a big wow.
So here is one of the great building locations in the city with underground connections to Grand Central. It's as good as one Vanderbilt in terms of the location, not the building, of course. And it's going up in smoke.
But Larry, there's one other thing to know. This building is protected by historical value. And so you can't just do anything to this property without passing the bar with the historical
So there's all kinds of zoning
whole
and
landmark. It's been land, and that creates another problem. And only time will tell what happens. But going back to the market generally, I talked about 98 million square feet available, and that there are only 20 blocks of 100,000 square feet in Midtown, amounting to about 8.5 million. But major deals are being done. Blackstone, as you may have read, leased 1,100,000 square feet. Bloomberg, 1,100,000 square feet. Ropes and Gray, 750,000 square feet, and others. And there have been a lot of transactions, more than 30 million square feet will be transacted in 24.
Steve, but I'm going to assume from that these tenants are moving from older buildings to newer
Correct.
buildings.
Absolutely.
So that means there's, I don't know how many feet, 30 million feet of older buildings that are suddenly going to have a new platform.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct, Larry.
So that is going to exacerbate the problem.
Absolutely. If you said to me, asked me a question, are rents going up or going down? Rents, if you look at the figures, are going down. They're not going down because of anything other than the expensive space is being leased and the less expensive space is available. So
then I have to ask you a question. I'm going to assume that many of these buildings, since they're all highly leveraged, because that's what real estate entrepreneurs do, they can't pay their mortgages. Therefore, I'm going to assume that some bank somewhere or somebody somewhere who owns these mortgages is not getting paid. What are those folks doing who are not getting paid? Are they saying that you're out of the building, landlord, we're taking it over? Or are they just kicking the can down the road?
The second, kicking it down the road. There will be more foreclosures in 25. There are about $7 billion worth of financing coming due in 2025. Banks don't want property. What banks want is not the responsibility of taking care of a piece of property. And what they're doing is giving short-term loans. How short? SL Green just took a year mortgage down at 1 Madison. They took a 3-year loan on the Viacom building, 1515 Broadway, which is an interesting story. That building, 2 million square feet, is occupied 99% by Viacom, Paramount, CBS. It's one tenant. They're looking to possibly convert that building into the casino of Times Square, which would be an interesting development. And I don't think, for the benefit of the city, I don't think that's the place for a casino.
But meanwhile, do the banks have to demonstrate on their financial statements that they're unlikely to collect this mortgage? Do they have to set up a reserve? I mean, what are the banks doing when they know they're not going to get paid?
That's for them to say. I don't know. I don't know. but it's certainly not a good thing to just keep on kicking the can down the road, because eventually the can stops rolling and it comes to a bad conclusion.
And the other building that I was thinking about, because I've been in that building so many times, is the old Helmsley building at 230 Park. I mean, that's the building that you kind of come through when you travel north or south on Park Avenue, and you go through the building through Grand Central and wind up on Park Avenue South or Park Avenue, you're going north.
1,400,000 square foot building, a $675 million mortgage that is coming due. A vacancy is creeping up in the building. It's not fully leased. The owners are thinking of residential, but then they say that doesn't work, but it's still on the boards. Time will tell. It is a bad situation, very bad.
And it's again a perfectly located building.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, it does have an abundance of elevators, and it does have operable windows, which helps if you're going to convert. But it's not as easy as said as done. As I said earlier, to convert a building is not easy in any sense.
I suspect our audience knows this, but owning commercial real estate has great tax advantages. I wonder if you're in a position to talk about it, because the owners of this commercial real estate normally receive a lot of income that's tax-free.
Yeah. I don't have the knowledge to
Okay.
help them on that, but what you said is correct.
And so that's one reason they never sell buildings. And when they sell buildings, they replace them with other buildings.
Yeah.
Because then they don't have to take a capital gain or, okay, I won't get into it. Steve, I've often thought of real estate developers as the greatest entrepreneurs of our time, because I'm just thinking of One Vanderbilt. You mentioned, I think before, that it took them 10 years to assemble this plot of land. So for 10 years, they're buying land, they're paying interest on some kind of a borrowing, they're collecting no income, they don't know if they're going to be able to complete this purchase, they don't know how much the building will cost to go up, they don't know what the rent will be when the time comes that they're ready to lease. Are they the greatest entrepreneurs of all, or am I exaggerating it?
Some of the things you said, I would say aren't factual. When you assemble a site, the property that you're assembling does have an income on it. The most important thing when you're assembling a site is to know when that property will be vacant. So you do have some income, but you have to measure that with the fact that you want occupancy at some point. You also want possession on the rest of the site also, and that costs money. But at the same time, there are architects and engineers that you can go to, and you can get approximate cost of what, if not a good idea of what it's going to cost you to build. And then again, you have to go to the professionals in the market and ask questions and figure out what the rent is going to be. I assembled a
But
site.
you got to do that years in advance.
Absolutely. I assembled a site for a developer on 40th Street and Fifth Avenue, 461 Fifth Avenue. It only was two buildings. One was the Lane Bryant building, and the other was just a walk-up. The site was a wonderful site, and the developer hired Skidmore, Owens and Merrill. Now, the point of what I'm about to say is he did all his homework to figure out what it's going to cost. And then he came and said, what do you think I can get in rent? And what sort of loss factor do you think I could put on the building? Number one, loss factor, I said, the maximum loss factor you could talk about is 21%. And number two, the rent we should talk about is probably $35 a square foot. All right? Well, the fact is that a week later he came back and he said it doesn't pen out with a loss factor of 21.5%. It has to be 22.5%. P.S. We put it on the market with a 22% loss factor. And we talked about a rent of $45 a square foot. Timing was right. We got $45 a square foot, and the 22% loss factor was accepted. So there's a timing element and some of the things you don't expect, and it works out correctly.
Gwen, you look like you have some questions from our audience.
Yes, we definitely do have quite a few questions here. The first one I want to pass along to you is the following. With the current surge towards new top-tier properties, how can owners of older Class B and Class C office buildings stay competitive? Beyond mere cosmetic updates, are there more innovative repositioning strategies or niche use cases you believe could help these assets remain viable?
Some buildings can be improved significantly in the sense of elevators and better air conditioning. But all buildings, in my experience, have to keep their eye on the ball with the amenities. And as I said earlier, the cost of these amenities is very, very, very expensive. In some of the buildings, in the B and C buildings, the best thing would be to demolish them and rebuild a new building.
Very similar to this, really it follows on from what you just said, is the following. How would the New York City Sustainable Buildings local laws impact new construction, and what needs to be done to existing buildings to adjust to the code for reduction of greenhouse emissions? Are these costs high enough that it would actually favor demolition in many of the cases of the older buildings?
To change a building into a viable building with the law and the new legislation going through is expensive, but it doesn't, in my experience, lead to a necessity to demolish the building.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Is New York going to manage with fewer square feet years from now than it had 5 years ago? Is that the way it's going to be? The commercial occupancy will just be down, and we will operate with many fewer square feet.
That's a good question, a very, very good question. I don't have the answer, but I will tell you that there is a lack of property being developed today for the future. Very few buildings are in the pipeline. There are a few, I can name them, but they are not a lot of them. In my opinion, I think we will do, there'll be fewer larger buildings and there'll be less expansion to the office market than we've experienced in the last 10 years. That's
I'm sorry.
All right, are you ready for the next question? This is a question about empty office space. The question is, I have seen a similar trend in Buenos Aires where the financial district seemed like a ghost town and the local government is analyzing what to do with that part of the city. On the other hand, I've been to Boston and it's booming with new construction in certain areas. Do you have a sense for what kind of factors tend to determine the direction a city center will take when it's in bad straits? And I guess locally, our example is the financial district. But what kind of factors would be important today?
Good question. certainly downtown is in a state of flux. The financial district has probably more property being converted into residential than any other area. And I think that the apartment or the residential community will continue to thrive, and more of the character of downtown will change into residential. And I mean, the best properties down there are suffering. The downtown market has a very high vacancy. So the answer is, I think it will evolve. There are now more residential, and more residential leads to more residential. Stores are coming in, certainly at 1 Wall Street. Maclo is putting in not only food stores, but department stores. So that's going to help the area, and other buildings will follow suit also.
I started my career at 70 Pine Street, which was the
Yeah.
Merrill Lynch headquarters and is now a residential building.
Yeah, yeah.
It's where AIG was. I'm sorry, Gwen.
No, it's okay. Actually, we have time for one last question, and this is really for both of you. We have an academic department in real estate, and they also manage a Center for Real Estate Studies. And we have students who are majoring in real estate, and from their academic program, they're going to get a really solid background. So the question would be, there are two kinds of questions here. What other academic areas and activities would you encourage our real estate majors to pursue as part of their undergrad experience? And kind of, since we're a little short on time, are there things that you would point out to them to be cautious about or to be aware of? So this is really for both of you, one for the profession of real estate and one for experience.
I'm going to leave it to you, Steve. If you were starting again, what would you do?
I don't know. I will say that understanding math and looking for detail and possibly the history of the area is helpful. The little things that you don't really concentrate on will help you in explaining to somebody the benefits of a location or the detriments of a location. Real estate is a very personal business, and you have to look to the future, not to the past. In many cases, to envision where a good building can be successful. For example, 1515 Broadway was developed by Minskoff, and he leased the building on Broadway to W.T. Grant, and then I secured a tenant for 350,000 square feet named Ted Bates. For Ted Bates to move from 666 Fifth Avenue to Broadway, I had to give them a reason why that was a good location for them and why it would make sense. And that was just based on history of an area, reading up on it, and being able to verbalize the benefits of that location.
I would add, Gwen, my impression of the most successful real estate people was that the most important ingredient they all share is great imagination.
Yeah.
They can imagine what a plot of land will look like 10 years from now, as opposed to what it looks like today. And in their mind, they know exactly what they want to do. So I would study imagination if there was such a subject.
Yeah.
Well, in entrepreneurship, we have it. We also have an academic department in our entrepreneurship and innovation. So I think our students are going to be very well prepared for the future.
Right.
That is the end of our hour. I really want to thank you, Steve, and thank you, Larry. I want our audience to know that our next webinar will be on February 11th. And it will be on food recalls and whether they indicate that our food supply is less safe, or is it just a matter of that our testing is better? Our guest will be our law professor, Valerie Watnick, and joining her will be Professor Donald Schaffner of Rutgers University. So that's also going to be a very topical topic for us to consider. So thank you, Larry. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Steve.
you. Pleasure.
Stay well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.